If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment. What if I told you that the people who dismissed you, overlooked you, or treated you as optional don't come back because you chase them? They come back when you change the way you stand. Most men believe regret is triggered by confrontation, explanations, or proving worth. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Regret is born when your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did. Think about it, you gave effort, you gave attention, you gave patience, and when it wasn't valued, something shifted inside you. The truth is, nothing unsettles people more than seeing you become calm where you once reacted, silent where you once explained, and self-directed where you once sought approval. That shift doesn't just confuse them, it pulls them back. In this video, you'll learn 9 Stoic attitudes that quietly flip the power dynamic. Not to manipulate, not to beg for validation, but to reclaim your self-respect so fully that those who underestimated you begin to feel the loss and chase it. Watch this video till the very end, because the final attitude is the one most men never master, and it's the reason regret turns into desperation. Number 1, emotional self-control, instead of reactive validation seeking. Emotional self-control isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about refusing to hand your inner world to people who haven't earned access to it. The Stoics were relentless about this point. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What he meant was simple. Stop reacting just to be seen, liked, or reassured. The moment you feel the urge to explain yourself, justify your worth, or chase validation, that's the exact moment you've surrendered your power. You feel it in your body first, a tightening, a restlessness, a need to respond now. That's the signal. That's where self-control begins. You don't build this attitude by pretending you don't care. You build it by caring less about the wrong things. Reactive validation seeking is emotional noise. It's the habit of letting other people's attention, approval, or withdrawal dictate your mood and behavior. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Mastery starts inside. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again, slowly. Power over your mind, not over how others treat you. Not over whether they value you, just over your response. And paradoxically, that's exactly what makes people who once dismissed you start to feel uneasy, curious, even desperate. Not because you're trying to provoke them, but because you're no longer predictable. Right now, if you're honest, you probably feel emotional impulses pull at you throughout the day. The urge to reply quickly, the urge to clarify, the urge to prove you're misunderstood, the urge to be chosen. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress these urges. It asks you to observe them like a disciplined witness. Seneca warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Every time you react emotionally for validation, you train your nervous system to seek permission from others. Every time you pause instead, you reclaim ground. This is not passive, it's active restraint, and restraint is strength. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking, even silently, "How do they see me?" and start asking, "Am I acting in alignment with my principles?" That one question changes everything. Validation seeking looks outward. Emotional self-control turns inward. You stop performing. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop explaining yourself to imaginary judges. And suddenly, your presence feels heavier, quieter, more grounded. People sense it without understanding why. Humans are exquisitely sensitive to emotional independence. They feel it the way animals feel calm authority. No display required. This attitude is built through repetition, not insight alone. Start with a simple daily practice. When you feel an emotional spike, irritation, longing, defensiveness, don't act for 60 seconds, just sit with it. Breathe slowly. Name it internally without judgment. That's it. You're training the gap between impulse and action. later echoed Stoic wisdom when he said that in that gap lies freedom, but the Stoics lived it centuries earlier. Each pause weakens the old habit of reaction. Each pause strengthens your internal center of gravity. Another exercise is deliberate non-response, not silence as punishment, silence as discipline. When your instinct says, say something so you're not forgotten, you choose stillness instead. Reminded himself, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Living, in this context, means acting from intention rather than compulsion. You don't owe immediate emotional access to anyone. You don't owe constant availability. Let that truth settle. It may feel uncomfortable at first. Good. Discomfort is the sensation of growth. You should also audit your internal dialogue. Validation seeking doesn't only show up in actions, it lives in thoughts. Catch yourself replaying conversations, rehearsing explanations, imagining how someone might finally understand you. That mental rehearsal is emotional leakage. When you notice it, gently cut it off. Replace it with something grounding, a stoic reflection, a breath count, a reminder, their opinion is outside my control. Epictetus was blunt about this. He said some things are up to us and some are not. Other people's recognition never was. Acting as if it is only creates dependence. Over time, something subtle but powerful happens. Your emotions stop swinging wildly based on external feedback. You become slower to anger, slower to excitement, steadier overall. Not numb, steady. And steadiness is rare. In a world addicted to emotional fireworks, calm feels magnetic. People who once took your reactions for granted start noticing the absence. They feel the vacuum where your emotional energy used to rush toward them. That's when regret creeps in. Not because you're withholding to manipulate, but because you're no longer feeding a dynamic that benefited them more than you. Another practice you need is intentional self-approval. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Did I act according to my values? Did I control my reactions? Did I give my attention where it truly mattered? Answer honestly. No self-punishment, just clarity. Seneca encouraged nightly self-examination for this exact reason. You become your own witness. When you validate yourself internally, the hunger for external validation weakens. You stop begging the world to confirm what you already know. Understand this clearly. Emotional self-control doesn't make you invisible, it makes you selective. And selectivity creates gravity. When you're no longer easily provoked, easily pleased, or easily shaken, people recalibrate how they approach you. Some drift away. Let them. Others return, sensing something they can't name. That's not your concern. Your concern is sovereignty over your inner state. So take action, today, not tomorrow. The next time you feel pulled to react, pause. The next time you crave reassurance, withhold the request and give it to yourself instead. The next time your emotions surge, treat them like weather, felt, acknowledged but not obeyed. Reminded himself daily that he could meet whatever came with reason and calm. You can too. Emotional self-control is not a trait you're born with. It's a habit you build. And once built, it changes how the world treats you, without you asking it to. Number 2, quiet self-respect that doesn't demand acknowledgement. Quiet self-respect is one of the rarest forces you can cultivate, and because it makes no noise, most people misunderstand it. You don't announce it, you don't defend it, you don't demand that anyone notice it. You simply live from it, and that's exactly why it unsettles those who once dismissed you. Wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Read that again and let it land. The moment you stop outsourcing your worth to other people's reactions, something inside you locks into place. You move differently. You speak less, but with more weight. You stop explaining yourself, not out of bitterness, but because you no longer feel the need to justify your existence. This is where quiet self-respect begins, not as an attitude you perform, but as a posture you inhabit. You feel it when you resist the urge to correct how you're perceived, when you let misunderstandings sit without rushing in to clean them up, when you don't chase closure, validation, or last words. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be respected by others, you must first respect yourself. But what he didn't say explicitly, though it's implied in every Stoic line, is that self-respect loses its power the moment you ask for permission. The discipline here is internal. You decide privately what you tolerate and what you don't. You decide what aligns with your values and what doesn't. And then you act accordingly, without speeches, without ultimatums, without drama. That's silence. It's not emptiness. It's containment. And containment creates gravity. At first, this will feel uncomfortable because you're used to feedback loops. You're used to measuring your worth by how quickly someone responds, how warmly they react, how often they reassure you. Quiet self-respect breaks that addiction. You stop fishing. You stop checking. You stop performing. Seneca warned, "He who depends on another for his happiness is a slave." Let that sting a little, because the truth is, every time you seek acknowledgement, you hand over leverage. And when you withdraw that habit, when you become self-contained, people feel it, even if they can't explain why. There's a subtle panic that arises in those who once felt secure ignoring you. Not because you're punishing them, but because your emotional availability is no longer guaranteed. This is where you need to act deliberately. The practice is simple but not easy. Start by noticing how often you reach outward for confirmation. Catch yourself mid-impulse. Pause, breathe, ask, what would it look like to approve of myself here silently? Then do nothing. Let the discomfort pass. That moment of restraint is training. Called it returning to the citadel within. Every time you do this, you reinforce the idea that your worth is not up for negotiation. Over time, this rewires you. You become steadier, less eager, more selective, and that steadiness reads as confidence, even though it's really just self-trust. You'll also need to clean up your internal dialogue. Quiet self-respect starts in private. If you're harsh with yourself behind closed doors, you'll unconsciously beg others to compensate for it. So practice speaking to yourself with firmness, not cruelty. Not flattery either, just truth. When you mess up, acknowledge it without self-attack. When you do something well, register it without needing applause. Seneca advised, be your own spectator, seek your own applause. Make that a daily habit. At the end of each day, review your actions. Not to judge, but to calibrate. Ask yourself where you acted in alignment with your values and where you didn't. Then adjust. No guilt spirals. No self-praise performances, just quiet correction. As you embody this, you'll notice a shift in how you relate to attention. You no longer rush to fill silence. You don't over-explain your choices. You don't compete for space. You allow people to come to you or not. And here's the paradox. The less you chase acknowledgement, the more compelling your presence becomes, because you're no longer needy for it. Epictetus reminded us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's the essence of this attitude. You don't announce standards, you live them. You don't threaten withdrawal. You simply withdraw when something violates your inner code. To make this real, give yourself a few concrete practices. For the next week, practice deliberate non-reaction. When you feel the urge to clarify, justify, or seek reassurance, delay it by 24 hours. Most of the time, the urge will dissolve. Another practice, speak last, not as a tactic but as a discipline. Let others reveal themselves while you stay grounded. Also, commit to one daily act of self-respect that no one sees. Keep a promise to yourself. End something on time. Walk away from what drains you. These small, invisible wins compound. They teach your nervous system that you are reliable. And once you trust yourself, you stop asking others to do it for you. Understand this clearly. Quiet self-respect is not indifference and it's not coldness. It's precision. It's choosing where your energy goes and refusing to leak it into places that don't deserve it. When people sense that you're no longer trying to prove your value, it forces them to reassess how they treated you. Some will drift away. Let them. Others will circle back, curious, unsettled, drawn to the calm you now carry, not because you demanded it, but because you became someone who doesn't need to. So start today. Stop negotiating your worth. Stop narrating your intentions. Stop asking to be seen. See yourself. Stand there. Stay there. As said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. Quiet self-respect does exactly that. It changes you first, and everything else follows. Number 3, detachment from outcomes and approval. Detachment from outcomes and approval is one of those attitudes that sounds simple until you actually try to live it. At first, your mind resists. It wants reassurance. It wants signs. It wants validation, applause, closure, certainty. And yet the Stoics were relentless about this point for a reason. Epictetus said, "If you want to be invincible, make sure that nothing you depend upon is outside your control." Read that slowly. Let it sink in. Because the moment you stop tying your inner stability to how others respond to you, something powerful happens. You stop leaking energy. You stop performing. You stop waiting. And that shift alone changes how people experience you, whether you ever speak to them again or not. Right now, if you're honest, part of you still wants a reaction. You want acknowledgement that they misjudged you. You want regret to show on their face. You want proof that you mattered. That desire is human, but indulging it keeps you stuck. Approval seeking is invisible submission. Outcome attachment is emotional bargaining. When you detach, you're not becoming cold or indifferent. You're reclaiming ownership of your inner world. Put it plainly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength isn't loud, it's quiet, grounded, unshakable, and people feel it without you announcing it. Here's the truth most people miss. Detachment is attractive because it signals abundance of self, not scarcity of attention. When you no longer chase outcomes, your actions become cleaner. You speak without needing agreement. You act without needing applause. You walk away without needing the last word. This is where regret begins. Not because you engineered it, but because your absence of need creates contrast. When someone realizes you're no longer available for emotional negotiation, curiosity creeps in. When they sense you're no longer measuring your worth by their reactions, respect starts to grow. Not always immediately, but inevitably. To cultivate this attitude, you must first catch yourself in the act of seeking. Notice when you replay conversations in your head, imagining what you should have said. Notice when you check for signals, hints, or signs. Notice when silence feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is your training ground. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Every time you resist the urge to chase clarity or validation, you're strengthening a muscle most people never develop. Sit with the unease. Don't numb it, don't distract yourself. Let it pass, it always does. A practical exercise you can start today is a daily approval fast. For one full day, make a quiet commitment to yourself. No explaining, no over-justifying, no fishing for reassurance. Say what needs to be said cleanly. Do what needs to be done fully. Then stop. Observe how often your mind wants to reach outward. Each time it does, bring it back inward. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it. Literally exhale as you do. This sounds small, but repeated daily, it rewires how you relate to others and to yourself. Another exercise is outcome-neutral action. Before you do something, send a message, make a decision, set a boundary, pause, and strip away the imagined result. Act as if no reaction will come at all. Ask yourself, would I still do this if no one noticed? If the answer is yes, proceed. If not, wait. This practice aligns you with integrity instead of performance. Epictetus reminded his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. When you move without attachment, your presence becomes heavier. You're no longer trying to be chosen, you're choosing yourself. Detachment also means letting go of the timeline. Regret doesn't operate on your schedule. Approval doesn't arrive on demand. When you release the need for immediacy, patience replaces anxiety. You stop scanning the horizon for proof. You become rooted. And rooted people don't chase, they attract. Not because they're trying to, but because their stillness unsettles those who expected dependence. This is not a tactic, it's a transformation. The Stoics were clear about this distinction. Warned against external bargaining, never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it. Read that again. No strength in it. You'll know detachment is taking hold when your silence feels natural instead of forced, when you no longer rehearse explanations, when your focus shifts from how you're perceived to how you're living. This is where your energy consolidates. Instead of being scattered across imagined outcomes, it returns to your body, your breath, your work, your direction. And paradoxically, this is when people begin to wonder about you. Not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped needing it. One more practice, nightly mental subtraction. Before sleep, review the day and identify one expectation you carried that wasn't yours to manage. Let it go consciously. Say to yourself, "This was never mine to control." Seneca advised this kind of daily accounting, believing that clarity comes from honest review. Over time, this habit trains your nervous system to relax around uncertainty. You become steady where others become reactive, calm where others become desperate. Understand this clearly. Detachment doesn't guarantee anyone will return. That's not the point. The point is that you no longer hinge your peace on their movement. If they do feel regret, it happens on the edge of your life, not at the center of it. And that's why it carries weight. People chase what doesn't chase back. They question what doesn't explain itself. They reconsider what no longer seeks permission. So take action now. Start withdrawing your worth from external hands. Practice choosing principle over reaction. Train yourself to release what you can't command. This isn't about winning someone back. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to. And once you reach that place, whether anyone comes chasing or not, you've already won. Number 4, consistent personal standards that don't bend for anyone. Consistent personal standards that don't bend for anyone begin quietly, almost invisibly. They aren't announced. They aren't defended in debates. They're lived. And that's exactly why they carry so much weight. When you decide deeply and without negotiation what you will tolerate and what you will not, something fundamental shifts in how others experience you. Not because you demand respect, but because you no longer chase it. Wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That sentence sounds simple, but living it requires a spine. It requires you to stop adjusting yourself to keep others comfortable. It requires you to choose inner alignment over external approval again and again, especially when it costs you attention or affection in the short term. You feel the temptation to bend your standards most strongly when someone pulls away, when they fail to value you, when silence appears where effort once existed. That's where most people break. They soften their boundaries. They explain themselves too much. They tolerate what they shouldn't just to keep a connection alive. You're being called to do the opposite. Stoicism teaches you that your character is the only thing truly in your control, not how others feel, not whether they stay, not whether they come back. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, make yourself indifferent to things you cannot control. When your standards are consistent, you stop negotiating with uncertainty. You stop trying to earn what should be freely given. And paradoxically, that's when regret begins to grow in the minds of those who dismissed you. Consistency matters more than intensity. Anyone can hold a standard once in a dramatic moment. Very few can hold it quietly, repeatedly, without applause. When you don't bend just this once, when you don't make exceptions for charm, nostalgia, or loneliness, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. Your life is governed by principles, not impulses. That's unsettling to people who rely on leverage, emotional swings, or inconsistency. They sense they can't move you the way they used to. Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here isn't confrontation. It's restraint. It's the courage to remain steady when part of you wants to chase, fix, or prove. This steadiness rewires how you see yourself too. You stop asking, "What should I do to keep them?" and start asking, "What action keeps me aligned with who I've chosen to be?" That question changes everything. It removes desperation from your tone, urgency from your behavior, and chaos from your decisions. You become slower to react and quicker to notice. And when you move cleanly. No mixed signals, no backtracking, no hidden agendas. That clarity becomes rare. And what is rare is often chased. Stoicism never promised that holding your standards would feel easy. In fact, it often feels lonely at first. But loneliness with self-respect is lighter than connection built on self-betrayal. Reminded himself, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. Read that again. Let it sink in. Your peace grows in direct proportion to how little you abandon your values for temporary relief. The moment you stop bending, you also stop broadcasting need. And when need disappears, so does the power others had over you. Now this isn't about rigidity or coldness, it's about coherence. Your words match your actions. Your standards apply whether someone is watching or not. You don't punish. You don't perform distance. You simply choose yourself with consistency. That's what creates regret in those who didn't value you, not because you affection as a tactic, but because you access to a version of yourself that was endlessly flexible. People rarely miss what was chaotic. They miss what was solid. To build this, you need practice, not motivation. Start with a daily written check-in. Each morning, write one sentence answering this. What kind of person am I choosing to be today, regardless of how others behave? Keep it simple. Then at night, reflect briefly. Where did you feel the urge to bend? Where did you hold steady? No judgment, just awareness. Epictetus taught that progress begins with observation. This exercise sharpens that skill. Another practice is intentional pause. When you feel pulled to respond emotionally, don't. Delay your response by an hour a day, whatever feels challenging but manageable. During that pause, ask yourself, if I act from my standards instead of my emotions, what would I do? Write the answer. Often the urge passes. What remains is clarity. That clarity becomes your compass. You can also rehearse your standards mentally. Stoics called this preparing the mind in advance. Visualize moments where you're tempted to compromise. See yourself choosing restraint, silence, or distance calmly, not angrily, calmly. This conditions your nervous system to stay regulated when it counts. You're training composure, not avoidance. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop needing closure from people who couldn't meet you where you stand. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop proving your worth. And in that quiet strength, others feel the absence of control they once had. Regret isn't loud. It shows up as curiosity, second-guessing, and a sudden desire to re-enter your orbit. Whether they do or not becomes irrelevant because by then, your standards aren't a strategy. They're simply who you are. Remember this above all, consistent personal standards aren't there to make anyone chase you. They exist to make you unshakable. Any regret that follows is a byproduct, not the goal. As wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. Choose that today, then choose it again tomorrow, and again. That repetition is what changes everything. Number 5, calm indifference toward disrespect or neglect. Calm indifference toward disrespect or neglect is one of the most misunderstood attitudes, yet it is also one of the most powerful. Most people think power comes from reacting, explaining, confronting, or demanding recognition. It doesn't. Power comes from deciding what deserves your energy and what does not. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." That sentence alone can change the way you move through the world if you let it. When someone disrespects you or treats you as if you are optional, the instinct is to correct them, to prove your worth, to demand fairness. But the moment you do that, you've already handed them control. Calm indifference is the refusal to participate in that exchange at all. When you practice this attitude, you stop advertising your emotional buttons. You stop showing people where to press. You don't become cold or bitter, you become selective. You recognize that not every action deserves a reaction and not every silence needs to be filled. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Calm indifference often looks like weakness to those who don't understand it. They expect agitation. They expect pursuit. They expect emotional noise. When they get none of that, something unsettling happens inside them. Your absence of reaction becomes a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. This attitude is not about pretending you don't care. You do care, but you care about the right things. You care about your principles, your self-respect, your inner order. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Calm indifference is a form of bravery. It takes strength to sit with discomfort without lashing out. It takes discipline to remain steady when ignored or minimized. But every time you do, you reinforce something vital inside you. The knowledge that your worth is not negotiated through someone else's attention. You have to understand this clearly. Chasing clarity from someone who disrespects or neglects you is a losing move. Not because they are evil or malicious, but because attention gained through pressure is unstable. The Stoics believe that dependence is the root of suffering. When your peace depends on how someone treats you, you are no longer free. Calm indifference cuts that dependency at the root. It says, without saying anything, I am not available for this dynamic. And that statement carries more weight than 1,000 emotional conversations ever could. Adopting this attitude requires daily practice. It doesn't happen overnight because your nervous system has been trained to seek validation. So start small. The first exercise is awareness. When you feel the urge to react, to explain yourself, to seek reassurance, to confront, pause, just pause. Take a slow breath and ask yourself one question: is this within my control? If it's not, let it go. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength grows every time you choose restraint over reaction. Another practice is intentional silence. Silence is not passive, it is deliberate. When you feel disrespected, resist the urge to fill the space. Let the quiet do the work. Silence forces others to sit with their own behavior. You don't need to teach lessons or make points. Your composure becomes the message. This is not about playing games. It's about refusing to abandon yourself for the sake of being acknowledged. You should also train emotional neutrality through journaling. At the end of the day, write down moments where you felt overlooked or dismissed. Don't dramatize them, describe them plainly. Then write how you responded and how you could have responded with calm indifference. This trains your mind to see alternatives. Over time, you'll notice the emotional charge weakening. What once felt personal starts to feel irrelevant. That's growth. Calm indifference also requires you to detach from outcomes. You are not indifferent to your values, but you are indifferent to whether others validate them. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." When you live this way, something shifts. You stop waiting for regret from others. And paradoxically, that's often when it appears. Not because you demanded it, but because people are drawn toward what does not chase them. You must also clean up your inner dialogue. If someone neglects you and your mind immediately starts negotiating, maybe I should try harder, maybe I should explain myself, interrupt that pattern. Replace it with a simple truth: I do not need to be chosen to be complete. Repeat it until it feels normal. The Stoics practiced mental rehearsal for adversity. You can do the same. Imagine being ignored. Imagine remaining calm. Imagine your life continuing uninterrupted. This reduces fear and builds emotional immunity. This attitude changes your posture in every area of life. You stop performing. You stop overextending. You stop rewarding poor treatment with increased effort. Instead, you conserve your energy for what aligns with you. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Calm indifference is the refusal to waste emotional time on what does not respect you. Take action today. Decide where you will no longer react. Decide what behaviors you will meet with quiet distance instead of explanation. Practice responding slower. Practice saying less. Practice being unbothered, not as a mask, but as a discipline. Over time, this attitude reshapes how others perceive you, but more importantly, it reshapes how you perceive yourself. You don't need to announce your boundaries when your behavior enforces them. You don't need to demand respect when your presence assumes it. Calm indifference is not about revenge or proving a point. It is about alignment. And when you are aligned, you become difficult to ignore and impossible to control. Carry this with you. Practice it daily. Let your calm speak. Let your absence of reaction do the work. And remember what knew centuries ago: the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Number 6, focus on self-mastery rather than being understood. There's a quiet power that shows up the moment you stop trying to be understood. Most people don't realize how much energy they waste explaining themselves, defending their motives, clarifying their intentions, hoping someone will finally get it. You've probably felt that pull too, the urge to correct the story others have in their head about you. But Stoicism cuts straight through that impulse. Epictetus put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That line stings at first, but sit with it. It's not telling you to shrink. It's telling you to redirect your focus. The moment you stop chasing understanding, you reclaim control. And control, real control, begins with self-mastery. Self-mastery is choosing command over chaos. It's deciding that your inner world matters more than the shifting opinions outside you. When you obsess over being understood, you hand your peace to people who may never be capable of seeing you clearly. You end up reacting instead of acting. You adjust instead of anchoring. And slowly, without noticing, you train yourself to live for an audience that isn't even paying attention. Warned against this trap when he wrote, "I do my duty, other things trouble me not." That's the posture. Do your duty to yourself. Let misunderstanding exist without treating it like an emergency. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't regret losing you because you explained yourself better. They regret it when they feel your absence, when your energy is no longer available for debate, justification, or emotional labor. When you shift your attention inward, toward discipline, restraint, and growth, you become less accessible. Not cold, not bitter, just grounded. And grounded people are magnetic because they are no longer begging to be seen. They are busy becoming solid. Think about how often your emotions pull you into unnecessary conversations in your head, replaying moments, imagining what you should have said, wishing someone understood your side. Seneca warned about this kind of mental leakage. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Self-mastery begins when you catch yourself in that spiral and choose differently. Instead of rehearsing explanations, you train composure. Instead of clarifying yourself to others, you clarify your standards to yourself. This is not passive. It's disciplined withdrawal. And discipline always creates distance, distance that others feel later as loss. To live this attitude, you need habits, not slogans. Start with emotional containment. When you feel the urge to explain, pause. Don't suppress the feeling, observe it. Ask yourself, what am I trying to gain right now? Respect, validation, relief. Then ask a harder question. Can I give that to myself through action instead of words? Most of the time, the answer is yes. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth when your behavior is aligned with it. Another practice is deliberate silence. Not dramatic silence, calm silence. The kind hinted at when he wrote, Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Silence isn't absence, it's compression. It concentrates your energy. Try this exercise. For 1 week, remove the impulse to correct misunderstandings that don't affect your integrity. Let people be wrong. Notice how much time and mental space opens up. Use that space to sharpen a skill, refine your routine, or strengthen your body and mind. You'll feel resistance at first. That's your old identity begging to be reassured. Don't feed it. Self-mastery also means governing your reactions. When you no longer seek to be understood, you stop taking things personally. Words lose their hook, opinions lose their sting. Epictetus reminded his students, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Train yourself to catch the judgment. When someone misreads you, don't rush to fix it. Label the sensation. Breathe. Let it pass. This is a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. Now here's the paradox. When you stop explaining yourself, people start watching you more closely. Not because you're trying to provoke them, but because your calm creates contrast. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer available on demand. You're living from an internal code, and people always feel the difference between someone who moves from need and someone who moves from principle. Seneca wrote, "The wise man is self-sufficient." Self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation. It means your center of gravity is inside you. Build rituals that reinforce this. Each morning, write down one thing you will control today and one thing you will deliberately ignore. Control your effort. Ignore the need for recognition. Control your conduct. Ignore assumptions. At night, review yourself, not others. Practice this constantly, asking whether he acted with justice, restraint, and clarity. That's the scoreboard that matters. There will be moments when you're tempted to break this discipline, when silence feels like weakness, when not being understood feels unfair. That's when you remind yourself why you're doing this. You're not trying to win arguments. You're building a self that doesn't need them. You're becoming someone whose presence is felt more in absence than in explanation. Someone who doesn't chase closure because they've already closed the loop internally. And this is where regret is born on the other side. Not because you demanded it, not because you announced your growth, but because you moved on quietly. You mastered yourself instead of managing perceptions. You invested in depth instead of noise. People don't chase what pleads. They chase what walks away whole. So choose self-mastery today. Choose the harder path of restraint, the quieter path of discipline. Let misunderstanding exist. Let silence do its work. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Do that consistently and you won't need to be understood. You'll be undeniable. Number 7. Silence and restraint, where explanation is expected. Silence and restraint feel uncomfortable at first, especially when someone expects an explanation from you. You can almost feel the pressure in your chest, the urge to justify yourself, to clarify, to defend, to be understood. But this is exactly where your power lives. The Stoics understood this deeply. Reminded himself, you always own the option of having no opinion. Read that again. No opinion, no explanation, no performance. When you stop rushing to fill the silence, something subtle but profound happens. The dynamic shifts. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing. When someone didn't value you before, they were used to access. Access to your thoughts, your emotions, your reassurance, your energy. Silence cuts that supply, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. And restraint ensures that whatever you do say, if you ever say anything at all, actually matters. Most people talk themselves into being overlooked. They over-explain their intentions, overshare their feelings, overcorrect misunderstandings that were never asked to be corrected. You don't realize it in the moment, but every unnecessary explanation quietly lowers your perceived value. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, let them misunderstand you. Let them guess. Let them sit with uncertainty. You don't need to rush in and save them from their own assumptions. Silence isn't passive. It's not weakness. It's restraint in motion. It's the discipline to pause where you once chased clarity. And restraint is what separates emotional control from emotional chaos. When you don't immediately respond, when you don't rush to explain why you acted the way you did, you're signaling something powerful. You are not governed by their expectations. You're governed by your principles. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." And bravery here looks like staying quiet when your ego wants to speak. What makes this attitude so unsettling to those who once dismissed you is that silence removes predictability. They no longer know how to pull you back into familiar patterns. You're no longer performing for approval or scrambling to repair perceptions. You're grounded, still, observant, and people feel that shift before they understand it. The absence of explanation creates space. Space invites curiosity. Curiosity turns into regret. Not because you tried to provoke it, but because you stopped preventing it. You need to understand this clearly. Explanations are often given to relieve your anxiety, not to improve the situation. When you restrain yourself, you're training a new habit. You're teaching yourself that discomfort won't kill you, that silence won't erase you, that not being immediately understood doesn't mean you've lost value. In fact, it often does the opposite. Advised, do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. Silence cuts off that waste. It brings your attention back to what you can control, your actions, your standards, your pace. There's a quiet confidence that grows when you stop narrating yourself. You begin to move differently, more deliberately, less emotionally reactive. And this is where regret is born, not from your words, but from your absence of them. When you don't explain, others are forced to confront the gap you left behind. And gaps invite reflection. Reflection invites longing. Longing invites pursuit. You didn't demand it. You didn't ask for it. You simply stopped interfering with the natural consequences of your self-control. To live this attitude, you need to practice restraint intentionally, not just when it feels easy. Start small. When you feel the impulse to clarify yourself unnecessarily, pause, count your breath. Ask yourself, is this explanation serving my values or my insecurity? Most of the time, the answer will surprise you. Another exercise, commit to delayed responses. Not as a tactic, but as discipline. Let your nervous system settle before you speak. Seneca believed that time reveals the truth of emotions. Give yourself that time. You can also practice silent observation. When someone presses you for reasons, for emotional labor, for reassurance you didn't offer, say less than you normally would. Not coldly, calmly, simply. Let your tone carry steadiness instead of words carrying defense. Over time, this trains you to trust your presence more than your explanations, and that trust is contagious. Remember, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about mastering response. Silence and restraint are not about punishing others, they're about reclaiming yourself. When you no longer feel compelled to explain, you've crossed an internal threshold. You've moved from needing validation to embodying self-respect, and that shift is impossible to ignore. So start today. Notice where you over-explain. Catch the moment before you justify. Choose stillness instead. Let silence do the work you've been exhausting yourself trying to do with words. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Be the person who doesn't chase understanding, because your composure speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Number 8, selective availability rooted in purpose, not scarcity. Selective availability, when it's rooted in purpose and not scarcity, changes something deep inside you. It's not about disappearing to provoke anxiety or withholding yourself to seem important. That's insecurity wearing a clever mask. Stoicism cuts through that immediately. Epictetus was blunt about it. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop managing appearances. Stop trying to be chosen. Start choosing how you spend your life. When your availability is shaped by purpose, you're no longer reacting to who notices you or who doesn't. You're acting in alignment with what actually matters to you, and that shift is impossible not to feel, both by you and by others. Right now, ask yourself honestly, how much of your time is given away without intention? How often do you say yes just to avoid discomfort, silence, or the feeling of being left out? That's not kindness. That's scarcity. Warned against this inner disorder when he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." When you make yourself constantly available, it's often because you're estimating other people's attention as more valuable than your own direction. Stoicism asks you to flip that. Your time is not a bargaining chip. It's your life in minutes. Selective availability grounded in purpose begins the moment you decide that your days have a spine, something solid running through them, a direction that doesn't wobble based on who texts back or who goes quiet. Seneca put it perfectly. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Purpose doesn't need to be dramatic. It needs to be deliberate. When your schedule reflects your values, even imperfectly, you stop leaking energy. You become calmer, slower to react, harder to pull off center. And paradoxically, this is when people who once overlooked you start feeling the absence they never noticed before. There's a subtle confidence that comes from being unavailable for the right reasons, not rushed, not defensive, not explained away. You don't announce it, you don't justify it. You simply live as if your inner work matters, because it does. Epictetus again, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Selective availability is the external consequence of an internal decision. You're no longer organizing your time around approval. You're organizing it around becoming someone you respect. Notice how different that feels in your body. Scarcity-based absence is tense. It's watchful. It keeps checking the door to see who's coming back. Purpose-based absence is relaxed, grounded. You're not hopping to be missed. You're busy being whole. And that's exactly why regret forms on the other side. Not because you vanished, but because you stayed and grew without them. Here, where you take this out of theory and into habit, start with a simple daily audit. At the end of each day, write down where your time actually went, not where you planned it to go, where it went. Then ask one Stoic question: was this within my control and did it serve my character? Use versions of this reflection constantly. This isn't about guilt, it's about clarity. Awareness precedes discipline. Next, practice intentional pauses. When a request comes in, any request, don't respond immediately. Not to manipulate, to consult your purpose. Count to 10, take one breath, ask yourself, does saying yes here strengthen or dilute the man I'm becoming? That pause is powerful. It retrains your nervous system. It teaches you that urgency is often an illusion. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." Let that line follow you through your day. Another exercise: define 3 non-negotiable blocks of time each week. These are appointments with yourself. No explanations required. During these blocks, you work, train, study, reflect, whatever aligns with your direction. Protect them quietly. You don't need to defend them. The Stoics believed self-respect was built through consistent action, not argument. Each time you honor these blocks, you reinforce a new identity, someone whose time has weight. Expect discomfort at first. That's normal. Scarcity has a withdrawal phase. You may feel restless. You may feel the urge to fill the silence. Don't sit with it. Epictetus reminded his students that progress feels strange before it feels natural. No man is free who is not master of himself. Mastery doesn't roar. It settles. Over time, something shifts. You stop checking whether you're valued because your days already answer that question. You're no longer overly available, yet you're not cold. You're present when you choose to be. That choice is everything. It communicates boundaries without speeches. It signals depth without performance. And yes, it awakens regret in those who once assumed your attention was endless. Not because you love, but because you access to a version of yourself that was too generous with what should have been guarded. Let this sink in. Selective availability is not about them chasing you. That's a side effect, not the goal. The goal is alignment, tranquility. The quiet confidence described when he wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." When your availability comes from that place, you don't need to chase or hide. You simply move forward. So take action today. Choose one small boundary, one intentional no, 1 hour reclaimed. Don't announce it, live it, then repeat tomorrow. This is how purpose becomes visible. This is how regret forms in those who didn't value you. And this is how you stop needing their realization to validate your worth. Number 9, inner fulfillment that makes external attention irrelevant. There comes a quiet moment, almost uncomfortable at first, when you realize that the hunger for attention was never about them. It was about the space inside you that you hadn't fully occupied yet. The Stoics spoke of this plainly. Wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Read that again, slowly. When you build that retreat within yourself, something strange happens. The noise outside loses its power. You stop checking who noticed you, who ignored you, who failed to choose you. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally arrived somewhere deeper. Inner fulfillment is not indifference, it's alignment. It's when your actions, values, and self-respect start working together instead of pulling you apart. When that happens, external validation becomes optional, not necessary. You no longer lean forward, waiting for someone else to confirm your worth. You sit back, grounded, calm. And that shift alone is enough to disturb anyone who once assumed your attention was guaranteed. Epictetus said it best. If you want to be invincible, make sure that you never enter a contest where the winning depends on things outside your control. Chasing approval is one of those contests. Inner fulfillment is how you quietly walk away from it. This attitude demands action from you. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Now, you start by reclaiming your mornings and evenings, those moments when the mind is most impressionable. Before you reach for your phone, sit with yourself. Ask a simple question: what do I want to embody today? Not achieved, not impressed. Embody strength, discipline, calm. Choose one. Let it guide your decisions. Seneca warned, if a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Fulfillment grows when your days stop drifting. As you practice this, you'll notice a subtle but powerful change in how you move through the world. You speak less, but with more weight. You listen without the hidden agenda of being liked. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. These aren't tactics, they're symptoms. Symptoms of a man who is no longer negotiating with the world for his sense of self. And paradoxically, this is what draws attention back toward you. Not because you chased it, but because you stopped needing it. Now let's be practical. Inner fulfillment doesn't come from vague affirmations. It comes from repeated acts of self-respect. One exercise you must adopt is voluntary discomfort. The Stoics practice this deliberately. Choose small, controlled challenges daily. Do the difficult thing you've been avoiding. Finish what you start. Sit with silence instead of distraction. When you train yourself to endure mild discomfort by choice, you build a quiet confidence that no compliment can give you. Reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every resisted impulse strengthens you. Another practice is removing mental dependence. Watch how often your mood shifts based on someone else's response or lack of one. Catch it. Don't judge it, just notice. Then remind yourself this reaction is optional. You don't need to suppress emotion, you need to stop obeying it blindly. Epictetus again, it's not things that disturb us but our judgments about them. Fulfillment grows when you choose your judgments carefully. There will be moments when your old patterns try to pull you back, when silence from others feels loud, when being overlooked stings. Don't run from that feeling, sit with it, breathe through it, let it pass without action. This is crucial, because every time you don't react, you weaken the old need for validation. You teach your nervous system a new language, one of self-sufficiency, and over time, this becomes your default state. You should also build a private standard, a personal code that no one else needs to see or approve of. Decide what behaviors you respect in yourself and which ones you no longer tolerate. Keep this code simple, clear, non-negotiable. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." But first, you must become someone you respect associating with. When you live by your own standard, regret forms naturally in those who once underestimated you. Not because you proved them wrong, but because you stopped caring whether they were right. Here's another exercise, nightly reflection. Before sleep, review your day without drama. Ask yourself 3 questions. Did I act in alignment with my values today? Where did I give my power away emotionally? What will I do differently tomorrow? Write the answers if you can. This isn't self-criticism, it's self-leadership. Did this relentlessly. Fulfillment isn't found in intensity, it's found in consistency. As this attitude takes root, you'll feel a strange freedom. You'll notice that you're less available not out of arrogance but out of self-prioritization. Your time feels valuable because you treat it that way. Your energy feels contained, focused. People sense this. They always do. And those who once failed to value you often mistake your inner peace for distance or mystery or challenge. Let them. You're not here to manage perceptions anymore. The deepest truth is this. When your inner world becomes rich, the outer world loses its leverage. You stop chasing because you're no longer empty-handed. You carry yourself differently. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of plead. And that choice, made quietly daily, is what makes external attention irrelevant. Ironically, it's also what makes it return. So start today. Strip your habits down to what strengthens you. Guard your attention like a scarce resource. Practice discomfort. Reflect honestly. Anchor yourself in Stoic discipline. And remember this final line from Epictetus. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. When you live that way, regret chases you, but it never catches you. If there's one thing Stoicism teaches you, it's this. The moment you stop chasing validation, your presence becomes impossible to ignore. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to explain yourself. And you certainly don't need to beg to be chosen. When you embody these attitudes, something subtle but powerful happens. Those who once overlooked you begin to feel your absence, your growth, your calm strength. Remember, regret isn't created by confrontation. It's created by contrast. By the quiet realization that they lost access to someone who was grounded, self-respecting, and no longer available for manipulation or indifference. You didn't change to punish them. You changed because you finally chose yourself. And that choice is magnetic. So take a moment after this video and reflect. Where are you still giving energy to people who haven't earned it? Where are you explaining, chasing, or shrinking when Stoicism asks you to stand firm and composed? Let go of what no longer aligns with your self-respect. Focus on your discipline, your purpose, and your inner peace. If this video resonated with you, stay with this path. Rewatch these principles, apply them quietly, and watch how life and people respond. Subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, and remember, the most powerful revenge is becoming untouchable.